All right, I gotta exit out of this for real quick. I think I like
Yep.
duplicated stream settings, which is confusing. I'm gonna mute real quick, all right?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so we're just gonna get right into it. Welcome back, everybody. This is now the 18th season of the HFFL. Uh, Officially old enough to vote. Do a lot of the good stuff at age 18. Um, and I'd like to introduce. So this year we're gonna have Alex kind of just talk through some trades since he does the trade log. He's probably the most plugged in on like, what trades are being made every, week, and some people can kind of overlook stuff that is made during the week because, it's busy, you got a lot of stuff going on. So we're just gonna try to do this like weekly show, just recap all the trades, say what we think about it, and so yeah, welcome our trade czar, Alex Feigenbaum.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, 18 years is crazy.
18 years
Well
is
done,
pretty crazy.
everybody.
You have
There.
been, this is your 11th year, I believe, out of the 18.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's still, I mean, anything over 10, I think, is like pretty crazy. But yeah, 18 is
Yeah.
getting way up there.
Yeah.
Um,
Very, very impressive, especially everyone who's made this happen and kept it around for that long. So, yeah, happy to jump into it. I think we had a very interesting off season for trades. I feel
mm-hmm.
like the new draft format, the new Devi rules. I think people were like excited about picks, more excited than they have been.
Yep, yep.
We had a lot of pick swapping, and then
What do
even
you,
just like some of these early trades that I forgot about are kind of
right?
interesting to
What do
look
you
back
think
at
of
now.
like where the rookie draft is? Because it's very robust now, right? Like there's like a lot of depth to it, and it's like kind of in different phases. Like obviously your first round pick, there's like risk attached because like if you whiff, then you might have like dead cap that you want to get rid of and like all that stuff. And then you have your like second to like fourth round picks that are like prime Devi, practice squad guys. And then you have your 5 to 7, which is like a little bit more rapid fire, but you're just basically taking like long shots on guys you might find somewhat interesting in case of like preseason turning out a certain way. Like how do you think like the draft feels like now compared to like when you first came
Yeah,
into the
compared
league?
to like 2 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I think definitely is more interesting with the Devi spots and the extra practice squad stuff. Like you really feel like you can find value in those, third round, fourth
Mm-hmm.
round. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, maybe this guy doesn't really have a path this year, but could see it next. I don't mind just like stashing
All
somebody
right.
for a year and
All right.
and being like, okay, we'll see what happens next year. And especially like sometimes you could even roll somebody over two times.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
some of these quarterbacks who are like, it's like, well, they're not going to start this year,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to start next year, but you can still kind of hold on to them if you believe in
Yep.
them. And maybe maybe next year is when you promote them, or maybe even the year after that.
Yeah.
So I think it feels pretty good. I think the first round pick meta I think is like a bit fuzzy still, where you're
Yep.
like don't even know which picks are actually good or
Mm-hmm.
not
Yep.
until you see how the draft shakes out, the way the
Yeah.
prices are and everything.
I did
I think
structure
like
it to try to make it like, you know, because like in the past it was like very obvious sometimes that like the eighth pick would be, outright
uh-huh,
better
uh-huh.
than certain picks. And then like I try to structure it so that, in general, there are obviously always going to be tier drop offs, but like you want to have like the second pick be in general a little bit better than the third pick, like, kind of like ignoring what the specific tier drop off is. So the values and like the second year especially, like how it uh kind of like flattens out the other way. That is supposed to make it like better to have like the higher picks. So you're not like, sometimes you actually felt at a disadvantage with like the third pick when somebody had the eighth pick because like you're like there's a complete
Right, right.
tier drop off. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'd rather have the $6 or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, it definitely feels pretty better. Like, I think overall, the earlier picks are definitely better than the
Yep.
later picks. At
Okay.
least they have been the last 2 years.
Yeah.
This year, I think you maybe, like, slightly
Mm-hmm.
flatter and,
Yep.
wound up being a lot of I think there wound up being kind of a lot of movement in the, like, second half of the preseason, I
Yep.
guess,
Yep.
on some of these, like, first,
Yeah.
like the Matthew Goldens and the Egbuka types, like, where,
Mm-hmm.
like, there
Yeah.
was a lot
A
of
lot of late,
momentum for
yeah, a
those
lot of late
players.
helium, as
Um,
they say, yeah.
yeah, so that's always gonna make things kind of funny, but yeah, it feels I think it feels good, and it's also like, you don't wanna reward too much, like, just getting the first pick is, like, so much better than
Right,
getting anything else,
exactly. Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think it feels pretty good. I felt really engaged in the preseason rookie draft pick stuff. Definitely the most engaged I've been
Right,
in
yeah,
that
and I'm
section of
hoping
it, so
I'm hoping that, like, reflects in, the trade activity during the off season because like, in the past, like, what you can trade in the off season is so limited and, like, people have extra keepers, right? So it's like or, like, extra assets, and they're like, "Well, I can't keep, like, this guy who deserves to be kept," but then, like, in a lot of cases, it was, like, too stale of what you're gonna move it for, like, you move it for free agent budget, I guess, but, like, at some point, it doesn't seem that worth it, so I'm trying to have more of a variety of, like, off-season, um, assets that you can, like, mix and match to kinda, like, get to a certain value, and I think we did see some, like, pretty
yeah,
big
yeah.
keeper for keeper trades or, like, keeper for, like, future pick trades and also free agent budget, and I think, like, as people kinda figure out what their strategies are in the draft, I think, hopefully I think it'll continue to grow and like people will, start using their like draft assets and everything like in their own way. So we get like, difference of, how you played and a difference of how, someone else might play it, So um
Yeah, which I think that is really cool,
right. So yeah.
to
I think
keep
yeah,
pushing that.
we do have to like fine tune stuff and make sure nothing is like, exploitable and stuff, but I do think like the bones of what we're going for is like I don't know. Personally, I found it a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of like intrigue and like definitely a fun level of like just tracking rookies knowing that you don't have like dead cap on the line for like picking them. It's just kind of track and follow. That part was like kind of fun too. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
So
Yep, for
yeah,
sure,
we
for
can
sure.
like jump into the trades now, right? So we can just start
Yeah.
from the top. You want to read it out?
We'll read it out. So I think we can kind of yada yada some of the like little
Yeah, yeah, we can.
draft picky stuff in the
Mhm,
middle, but the first one I think is quite interesting, which is the Mars and New England did a pick swap. So Mars moved up from 9 to 4. New England
mhm,
went back from 4 to 9,
mhm.
and New England got Ricky Pearsall
Yep,
in exchange for moving back and gave one fab to Mars. So basically one fab and pick 4 for pick 9 and Pearsall.
yep.
Um, which is really, really interesting trade. I think Pearsall's looking pretty, a lot of buzz, I think,
Mhm.
right now for Pearsall. It's like an often sort of like a big sleeper this year type
Yeah.
of guy
I
for
mean,
redraft.
it's crazy how fast like the 49ers like receiving core like completely flipped, right? Like last year he was like, you know, third or fourth, like if you include Jennings in the pecking order. Then all of a sudden Debo gets traded, Ayuk gets hurt, uh Jennings holding out, and all of a sudden, like it was really quick
Yeah,
of
yeah,
a
he's like
flip up.
the
So
main guy,
yeah.
right? Yeah, very interesting. I think right. I think Pearsall's value definitely feels higher now than it did on August 5th.
Hmm.
So that's kind of an interesting factor. And then and then what Juan Q ended New England ended up with Caleb
Yep.
Johnson at pick 9, and Mars ended up with Henderson at pick 4, which is then it's like, okay, well, Henderson's value also kind of on the
Yeah,
rise
yeah,
um, in the second half of the
yeah.
preseason. So
Interesting.
yeah, so I think
Yeah.
it's
It's pretty fair.
it's a
Like
neat trade.
yeah,
Y-
I can see it
Yeah,
working
yeah,
well for both sides. Like, Mars went up and
yeah.
got, a more buzzy prospect for sure at 4 than they would have been able to get at 9. And then
Mhm.
Pearsall, like, New England did empty the clip a little last year, so Pearsall was
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
pretty, I mean, like, this not the most expensive way to get a pretty good keeper, and he's cheap enough
Y
where, he has some runway too, right? So if he does turn out to
Yeah,
be,
yeah, yeah, there's real upside
yep, the
for
number one
sure.
guy there, like, for the future, then definitely could see this being
Y
a win-win, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for sure it could be a win-win. I think New England had, like, a big challenge this offseason, right? With,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
practically nothing
Yep.
really, like Purdy and Bijan on the tag, and that was it pretty much. So, like, a lot of room to pick up keepers,
Mhm.
and so I think being proactive early in the draft makes a lot of sense,
Yep.
to do that. So yeah, I really like it for New England. I think for Mars, I think wanted to move up and get somebody more exciting
Mhm.
than that sort of back end. Like the back end of that draft this year, I think it was like very wishy washy. Like a lot of these running backs, were just like, oh no, maybe like
Yeah, yeah.
maybe in the second half of the year, like
Yeah.
it'll kind of turn into
Yeah.
something. I don't know. Yeah, it's like very
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like like it was like kind of a weird second half
Yep.
of the first round.
For
So
me
yeah,
for
I could
me,
definitely
yeah.
see like wanting to get a premium player there.
The end of the first round felt like guys that you might, practice squad or even like, Devi, but
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
since
Mhm.
they're unable to be placed there, you are going to be waiting, I think, a bit on like returns from the guys picked a little bit later. Of course, they could surprise and like, contribute right away, but um for now, it does look like, they're gonna have to work their way up the thing. So, yeah, I mean, for Mars, like, if you don't want to hold a guy that long and like you want to get earlier returns, in theory at least, Henderson looks exciting and more, potentially more, ready to contribute. So, yeah, I thought it was a fun
Yeah.
trade.
But
Great to like start off the off season
yeah, yeah, yeah,
with a
yeah.
pretty spicy but like still pretty fair and interesting trade.
Yeah. Can always count on Mars for a nice
Of course.
spicy, get the trading kicked off
Of
and
course, of
something
course.
something fun going. So yeah, I would yeah, I think a kind of a win-win is how
Yep,
I would rate that.
yep.
It feels like a win-win. Um Cool. All right. So next one is Harlem traded Dak Prescott, who was on a what was he like at like 10 or something contract.
I think he wasn't contracted, but he was very cheap because I think
He was like a yeah, he was like
yeah,
a
he
free
got
agent,
dropped.
like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
waiver. Yeah, so traded Dak, who's he's now at 19, so he was probably like
11.
12 or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
on the
12 or
way. Yeah,
11. Yeah.
11 on the waiver, and traded Dak for Cooper Cup, who I think was I don't quite
No.
understand why Cup was in the trade, and six Fab. So really functionally just six
Just
Fab
Fab.
going back
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Harlem.
Yeah.
I don't understand exactly why Cup was in the trade.
Mhm.
Maybe you have more insight into that.
I don't, but like so this is what I'm talking about in terms of like I think as the meta evolves in terms of like trading and stuff, like and what people's draft strategies are, like where do they want to get like more picks and stuff. I do feel like in the future, like this DAC trade could even be like a for a late round pick and Fab maybe, like like it doesn't just have to be the Fab and Cup was I just think thrown in maybe just to I'm not really sure. He does seem a little
Yeah,
bit too old to have.
symbolic in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
know.
But yeah, yeah, I do think like maybe in like a year or two, Harlem might have a different strategy about like, oh, like we want to really load up on like third round picks because there are a lot of there are two Devi spots, so now like getting two of the more premier deviable guys is definitely basically it can be carried over to like something akin to a keeper, right? So I do think this is like a trade that exists this year because the meta isn't really super developed. Like people don't really know. They're kind of like still feeling out like what is a fourth round pick even worth, right? What is a third round pick even worth? Like before it was like pretty much nothing or like for agent budget. But I do think like with the extra Devi spot, like we will start to see like this kind of trade turn to like Dak for, four Fab and a fourth round pick or something, like I think those picks
Right,
will
right.
start to
Yep,
have a
yep,
little bit of value, because,
yep.
free agent budget, like it's nice, but like, you know, this trade came from basically Harlem having like way too many like pretty keepable guys, right? Like if they were, just one like extra of like what a full keeper thing would be, like maybe they would have tried to look for more. But I think like Dak was definitely on the periphery for them because of how good their keepers were. So they were willing to give him away, relatively cheap, I think. So I think it was smart by
Yeah,
OC, yeah. And then
yeah.
like Harlem, you can't really knock them because they had such good options. So
Yeah, I think that like at the end of the day, it's like, well, 6 fab. I mean, the most you can get is 10. So if
yeah,
you're,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like they're
yeah.
not that far off
Yep, yep,
from getting the max there.
yep.
And it's like they couldn't take players back because they had too many keepers. So,
Hmm.
I think Dak at 19 is a nice contract. Like it's not amazing,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
few dollars less than he
yeah,
would have gone for in the auction
yeah,
probably. I don't think it's like
yeah, yeah.
I don't think he would have been like 40,
Right.
so it's
Yeah,
like it's not amazing return, but
yeah.
it's a nice pickup. I think always nice to kind of when you don't have enough keepers to just kind of get that
Hmm.
settled in for the auction. And
Yep. Especially quarterback, having quarterback squared away, like
it's
you
it's nice.
you
Yeah,
could
it's
miss out on
nice.
values, but also like planning the rest of your draft is so much easier because you're not, you know, trying to think of like, okay, like this this QB1 is going to be anywhere from 40 to like 70. Like, like it's hard to plan around that if you're going in
Yeah,
without that
yeah,
settled.
it's
So
much
for
easier. It's much
Yeah,
easier.
so for OC, another trade I
Yeah,
think
I really
mostly
like
makes
it.
sense,
Yeah, I
yeah.
really like it for OC. I
Yeah.
think Harlem, it's kind of like I don't know, could they have squeezed out a
Probably.
fourth round,
Yeah.
5 fab and a fourth round pick if they really pushed maybe.
Hmm.
It's like not even that many teams wanted a QB. You need to find someone who needs a QB
Yep.
who likes Dak, who wants to simplify, like who has a keeper spot to
Yep.
use on a sort of medium quarterback, like
Yep. Yep.
so it's a good trade. I like it. I think, I think really nice for OC. Another team that kind of emptied the chamber last year and had to kind of go
Yeah.
grab a keeper to
Yeah.
fill out the roster.
Yep.
So yeah, so nice trade all around. I see in the Discord we've got an explanation that the cup trade was because of Fantrax issues. So
Okay, okay,
that
okay.
was
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
that
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 makes more
makes sense.
sense. Yes. Thank you.
Um, Cool. So, and then also, Hua says, where would Pearsall rank among Mars keepers if he had hung on to him? Among Mars keepers, where would Pearsall rank?
I mean, he
It's a good
kept
question.
Braylon Allen, who I'm personally not,
Yeah,
huge
I would
on.
say
So
above
I would
Allen,
say above Braylon
uh,
Allen.
ab-
Um,
above above Worthy for me, um,
Honestly,
below
probably
Rome.
it's close.
Yeah,
How
I'd say
much?
above
Wait, how much is
Worthy,
Parasol
below
kept for? Parasol is kept for.
8, and then he
Yeah,
was 1, so 8, 15.
so it's close with Rome. I guess it depends on what you think.
Yeah,
Okay, one is
and
cheaper,
then
but yeah, one is like definitely the
yeah, obviously
higher
below
draft
below
capital.
May, but that doesn't count
Yeah,
exactly since he was not a keeper before the season.
yeah,
Above Shakir at the same cost, I
yeah,
think for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it would be at like second or third
yeah. It is. It
probably.
is. It is strange that he chose Parasol to like unload
Yeah,
because like I definitely
yeah.
might have like chosen to unload some of these other guys, but to be fair, they are all murky enough where honestly, like it would not surprise me if Shakir is better or if Worthy is better.
Yeah,
Or, yeah,
yeah.
so it's
There's
like
big, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Maybe same tier, higher up in
for
the
sure,
same tier.
definitely a lot of uncertainty with like all these guys. Like you're basically none of them. I mean, Shakir was like a contributor last year, but a lot of these other guys were kind of like nothings or not really playable. Like like
Hmm.
not consistently anyway. So definitely kind of like Mars is definitely trying to identify like talent more than I think just straight off what they did
Right.
last year.
Totally.
So
So then, right.
well, yeah, we'll have to see if
Um,
that plays out well.
Yeah. All right, so let's speed run. Now we got a bunch of trades that happened during the
Mhm.
draft, so we
Yeah.
can speed run these a bit. But
Yeah.
I had Madison traded with Orange County. I traded the ninth pick in the second round for second round next year, and then OC went out on a limb and took
Who did they take?
Judkins
Judkins?
there.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
looked good, he looked like he got cleared, looked good, still not
Yeah.
signed. Who
Yeah.
knows what's going on here? I
Yeah.
think a nice pick with the bonus Debbie squad, right? You just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For sure. Yeah.
get him out of here this
Having
year.
yeah,
Honestly,
having to
maybe
carry
the
him.
best thing that happens is that he doesn't sign and gets redrafted by a team that's not the Browns.
Yeah. I will say I do like your strategic move to like kind of like first of all, you traded a 2-9, which is like one of the lower picks in the second round for, a undecided second round pick next year, right?
Y
It
yeah, I felt
lets
like good value
yeah,
there.
it's definitely good value. It lets kind of the meta like shake out. You'll be able to see a little bit more like, okay, like with the Devi spot, like what kind of things I want to do, and it's another asset to just trade during the season. So I definitely like the trade for you, like regardless of who OC was picking. But for OC, yeah, Judkins, because of the extra Devi spot, really is a lot easier to carry than pretty much any other year. Like it would kind of suck if he was unsigned and like he's either taking up just the one Devi spot or no Devi spot in the past. Like it definitely would have been more of an issue. So I
Yeah,
like
I
that
think
for
and
both of you, I guess. Yeah,
yeah, I think if you wanna get him, like, makes sense to do it. It,
yeah,
he wasn't gonna make it through the consolation round, I don't
yeah.
think so. Um, alright, and then we've got, these are slightly out of order, I think, but we'll
Yeah,
just
well,
go
I
with
mean,
it.
yeah,
So,
basically, Great Kills just traded down for a little bit of fab
yeah,
each time. Um,
um,
yeah,
yeah, so
it is
right.
in
So
the
it's
opposite
kinda
order.
like
Yeah,
looks like third round pick, late third round pick is a couple fab value,
yeah, yeah,
trading down a couple fab. Like, seems like pretty good,
yeah,
nice maneuvering here, get some
yeah.
fab
Because
for a
we
pick
had
you
we
didn't
had the
really want
compensation
anyway.
pick, so we didn't want to overload with guys that
Yeah,
would
you
have
end
it.
up with too
Yeah,
many. Right, you end up
right.
with two. If you're
Yeah,
like if you especially if in the second round you take a guy who you're planning on doing Devi or practice squad,
yep,
it's like, okay, now I've got too many
yep,
guys
yep,
that I
yep, yep.
can't actually
So
do anything with. So
yeah, we did kind of think about like trading for a future pick, but it was kind of hard to like know what to like value and like people weren't willing to just give up like a straight up third pick for the next round, so we just took the fab. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't really something that we were planning on like
yeah.
rostering, so yeah, I mean we can move
This
on from
next
there.
one I think is real interest is probably the most interesting of these draft trades, which was Virginia and Wilson Park. And Virginia sent Cortland Sutton to Wilson Park and got back the first pick of the third round in this year, and then this Wilson Park's second round pick next year.
Yep, who was picked with
Um,
the
it was Jordan James who ended up
mm,
getting cut.
yeah.
I think that's his name. This is
Yeah,
a guy I literally had never heard of this guy. It's
yeah,
San
he
Francisco.
did get cut,
I think
so
Virginia was excited about this guy, wanted to make sure he got him. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I don't think this was a guy on everyone's radar,
Hmm.
but obviously Virginia had some good luck with the McCaffrey backup
Yep,
last year. Uh, and then it was not no that's yeah, it had good luck with the McCaffrey back last year, maybe like try to do the same thing this year. um but yeah, then I think he got injured, and then they traded for Brian Robinson, and now it's just like, oh, this guy's not on the radar anymore.
yeah, yeah.
um so that, and then but then the second round pick for Virginia got the Wilson Park second round pick next year,
Hmm.
which is potentially a, we don't know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
some, the I do think like second round picks are good, like especially early second round picks are really good
Yep,
in HFFL. Like if you
yep.
just look around, it's like, look at some of these, it's
Yeah, it's the cream of the crop to Devi or whatever you
Drake
want to
May
do.
Drake
Yeah.
May was second round
Yep.
pick, and
Yep.
now like a sick contract, and like there's more, if you look around, the keepers are full of second round picks who
Yep.
end up on good contracts.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so there is definitely like a lot of value there. But the thing with Suton is that I think at the time it was kind of like, oh, it's like, okay, it doesn't seem like that good of a deal at he's at 15 this year and then
Yeah.
21 next year.
Yep.
But then you look at what happened in the auction, it's like, oh, that was actually a really good deal,
Yeah. Yeah.
because all the receivers wound up going for like 32
Yep.
that are like the same, like all the
Yep. Yep.
receivers that are kind of like around the Suton level, like the George Pickens and the DJ Moores and the like, all those guys basically went, or what, like Jalen Waddle, like
Yep.
all those
Yep.
guys kind of went for like close to 30.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. What's funny is like last year that tier of wide receiver was actually cheaper. Like they all kind of came in like in the low 20s, like, even a couple
mhm,
in the high
mhm,
teens.
mhm.
And this year that same tier of wide receiver in my mind, like kind of shifted up like, 5 or 6 or 7 bucks. And then like, like that tier was kind of like just shifted up. So like this did look a little bit better in hindsight for
Yeah, so
sure.
I think now I'm kinda like, I don't know, it's like that
Yeah.
probably saved like $10 in the
Yep.
auction, maybe
Yeah.
even more. Like that's a pretty good deal
Yeah.
for a second round pick. I don't know. Seems about right.
Yep.
And maybe a 2 year, could be maybe there's
Yeah.
some upside on
I,
this
w- I, w-
next year.
I
That's a
will
team that
say
needs to get
though,
to.
Virginia is like really good at like stacking the assets for when they need to
Mhm.
mix and match, right? So
Mhm.
it's a very Virginia deal to like pick up like future draft capital already.
Yeah.
While giving up a player probably they weren't going to keep at least, like it probably wasn't going to fit
Right.
for them,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
you could say Harlem had a similar situation where they had a guy that they weren't going to keep.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like six fab is, nice, but having a distinct asset and not fab, like, a future pick, it's better for trading within the year. It's also, better for the
Mhm.
future. Like, I do think like Virginia has a really good process in terms of knowing where to pick up like all the marginal value and like, keeping themselves as trade flexible as possible, right? So, they have that reputation for a reason. Like I do think this is another example of like, you know, them just being able to extract and maximize their trade returns.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think really, really good. Yeah, definitely at the time, I think was looked like a great trade for Virginia. I think now, you if you actually count the like if you're willing to be result oriented about it, I
Mhm.
think it's like okay, now it seems about right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you say oh the third round pick didn't the 2025 pick didn't really turn into anything, and
Right.
I think Sutton was like a slightly better deal
Yep.
um, than it seemed like at the time. So
Yep.
I don't hate it. I think Wilson Park had to pick up a keeper, from
Yeah, yeah,
somewhere.
for sure.
So,
Yeah.
it sort of makes some sense to trade some future capital. I think, they're pretty, kind of seems like, I don't know. It's a tough one to um, I think yeah, I don't know.
I think yeah,
I can
I
see.
think it's pretty even, but like the my takeaway is this is just an example of like Virginia's process, overarching
Mhm,
process that
mhm,
I think is, just very strong, like on paper, like this one trade itself, I think it did turn out pretty fair because of, Jordan James and
right,
right.
right, right.
But if you think about it in like a big macro level, like you do have to appreciate how Virginia is, good at like, scooping up assets to trade or, just stuff that can get better in the future. So but I do agree, it was pretty fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then last draft trade here was I traded my 2025 round three pick three to Mars for 2026 round three and two fab.
Mhm.
And this was just a spot where I didn't go. I think Mars really wanted to get Milrow. I think
Yep.
he took Milrow there. I'm
You
pretty
also had
sure, and I think he
a
just
compensation pick, right? Correct?
yeah. I had a comp pick and I had another round three, so
Right.
it was
Yeah.
like, it was
Yeah.
like kind of whatever. Like I
Yeah.
didn't need more draft this year, so
Right, right.
so I
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. Like Milrow is tailor made for like a Devi squad spot, and who
yeah,
know
exactly.
it
Another
can
yeah,
either it can either be really really worth it or it could have been a nothing pick. But like if Mars identified that guy as someone interesting to them, then good for them for getting him. But I do want to highlight like this is your second 2026 pick you picked up too, right? So this is, I just said it with like Virginia, but it seems like you did a good job of picking up some, future draft capital. And like I said, I think that's gonna help you, um, you know, mix and match for trades during the season. And as you see how some of the Devi spots and like the later picks work out, you'll maybe even have a better idea of like what you want to do next year in terms of draft. Like how many picks are you trying to
mhm,
stack? Like where do you
mhm.
want the picks? Like do you want them as high as possible? Is there like a sweet spot? So I do think you did a pretty good job, like strategically to trade into future year. You kind of just like see what the landscape is, and it gives you flexibility down the road. So yeah, I mean, fair trade for sure. Like this is like a pretty nothing
Yeah,
trade,
I
but
think
but
yeah.
did a good job of I think maintaining like flexibility going
Yeah, it
forward.
gives you a little something. I do think when you get to that like keeper cut, the
Mhm.
trade deadline situation, those
Yep.
second and third round picks are kind of spicy
Yeah,
for like
yeah.
you're just
'Cause
kind
they
of
can they
screwing around
separate,
with
yeah, they
people and
separate, like, like, it's an asset not everybody has to trade, or it's
yeah,
not worth, like,
yeah,
people will know,
exactly.
like, "Oh, like, your OC pick looks, like, really juicy by then," right? So, you have more
Hmm.
clarity on
Hmm.
what it is, so I do think, like, yeah, like, every time during trade deadline, it's, like, always, like, "Oh, this person's like, offering, you know, a lower end keeper plus, this pick, and like, I can't match that pick, so like, it gets harder to, try to beat offers. So I do think that's going to come in handy down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Cool. All right, so that's the end of the draft trading stuff. So then we have kind of a lull, I think, for like a week
Mm-hmm.
or so.
Yeah.
Everyone's sort of just waiting for preseason to play out,
Yep.
and then we get close to keeper deadline. It's kind of like, okay, here we go. Everyone's kind of making their last move. So
Yeah.
yeah. So first one on here is New England receives Jamison Williams and Yonkers receives 5 fab. And I think that seemed like a nice deal for to get Jameson Williams, who feels
Yeah.
like a pretty good keeper.
Yeah.
Feels like a pretty solid. It's like obviously an upside guy. Like he has this boom games and bust game kind of guy, but just a lot of it's a high scoring offense. A lot of potential for him to be a top
Yeah.
20, 30 receiver. And, it's that same kind of thing where I feel like it's like similar to kind of Sutton or someone like that. Like, it's just like these players were just so expensive in our
Mm-hmm.
auction
Mm-hmm.
because, in our league, you just need receivers. Like,
Yeah.
you really
I
need a
think
lot of receive,
everybody that ended up keeping a wide receiver, in that range was probably decently pleased after the draft, seeing how the prices played out. And in part, the prices might have played out the way they did because, so many of these kind of like, not top tier guys, but, pretty
hmm
interesting
hmm
middle tier guys. A lot of them were kept this year. I mean, Mars had like a couple of them alone. He
hmm
traded one out. Like, a lot of these guys were kept. So I think, when teams were filling out their rosters and they didn't have one of those guys, there was a bit of a bidding war to try to get like those wide receiver two, threes with upside that uh were on auction. So yeah, I do think like anyone that traded for a guy like this probably was pretty pleased with how the auction turned out. Yeah, and overall, I was actually really impressed with how New England, their keepers at the end, obviously weren't the strongest, but um due to tagging Bijan and everything, like their starting, starting hand going into the auction was actually, pretty strong, I thought, and they did a good job of knowing when to, jump in with these trades, and I do think they ended up with a pretty decent group considering how much they emptied the clip last year, so very resourceful, I thought.
Yeah, I thought great offseason for New England.
Yeah.
Yeah, resourceful, like didn't have that much to work with and,
Yep.
and wound up getting pretty good,
Yep.
pretty good players out of it. And yeah, for Yonkers, I think, it's sort of a case of probably too many, maybe, I mean, they did a few moves to kind of reshape the
Mm-hmm.
team. And I think maybe just some of this maybe was just like didn't really want to do 2 years for Jameson
Right.
Williams,
Right.
didn't feel good about doing one
Yeah.
year for it's
Yeah.
like
I will say,
maybe they wanted to get away from it, but I do
yeah.
feel like maybe if there was a little more bidding, there might have been a better
Right.
offer.
I will say, as a Lions fan, Jameson Williams being back with the Lions isn't, as locked in as like all their other young core. And like, if he
Mm,
does end up on a different team, if the offense is a lot worse, it is a little more
mhm.
volatile of an asset than you might think, right? So if Yonkers was thinking a little on the lower end of what could happen this year, and then like didn't love the going forward, like, I get what the thinking was. It is kind of, I think, within the realm of opinion to think, like, they drafted Tesla and like new offensive coordinator. There's a lot up in the air
Mhm.
for sure. So
Mhm.
that could have been part of their thinking, I think. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think you gotta like this for New England overall, just because anytime you give up free agent budget for somebody that you like as a keeper, like then I think you can never really be too mad at how much free agent budget you give up, right? So um, obviously New England did see this as a good value, so going out and getting it without compromising any other assets is I think always you know commendable at least. So
Yeah, yeah, totally, really solid, for New England. And yeah, it's just interesting, always interesting, I think, when people are like, "Oh, I've sort of got too many keepers," and,
mhm,
you're trying to find the people who actually want a keep
right.
wanna pick up a keeper, and it is a limited market, and
Yeah.
so you have to get
So
creative with
yeah,
it,
like I was
but,
saying before, like my hope is that like once the rookie draft is a little bit more like the meta is like fleshed out and stuff, I do want to like because like for Fab, like these trades are so kind of like it just dies there, right? Like that
Mhm.
specific Fab isn't gonna be any specific player. I mean, it might help you over the season, but like it's very hard to like trace that back. But like if for example Jameson was traded for like a third round pick and like two Fab, right? Like the trail lives on, and then like you see next year, oh,
Right,
like that third
right.
round pick ended up being this and this player, and like I think it'll be a lot more interesting that way. I
Yeah,
do think
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, I do think it's a little bit too early in the meta for people to like kind of properly value, the later picks and all that. So like we're still seeing like a lot of Fab trades, but it is my hope in the future that we do see a
Yeah.
little bit more variety with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think, like, yeah, it's kind of the kind of thing where, like, probably was maybe someone else who might have offered a pick, and then it's
Mm,
sort of up to you. Think the pick is worth more, or how you
yep.
want to shape your team,
Yep.
totally. So yeah, great trade for New England, I think.
Then this is the big
Yeah,
one.
next one, yeah, yeah. So this actually so this is
How
Madison
yeah.
traded with
How how
Madison receives
how
Bo
uh
Nix.
upfront, just how long, like did it come together quickly, or was it like kind of a running thread during the off season? That's what I'm
Yeah,
curious about.
yeah. So the trade was, it was Bo Nix and Chase Brown for Nico Collins and three Fab. So
Yep.
I traded Collins and Fab, and I got Bo Nix and Chase Brown. It's really interesting. So we talked about a trade like this in before the auction,
Mm.
before the rookie draft. I mean,
Rookie draft,
before, so we
yeah.
started talking about it in the beginning of August. We started talking about, like, oh, I like he like I knew they had to kind of players. I like Bo Nix. I just kind of wanted to. He's a player I liked, and I liked that, obviously the salary's good, and everything.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so I liked Bo Nix, and then we were kind of passing it around. We were like, okay, well, your players are so good. Like the Harlem team is so good,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
like looking at their keepers, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, I have, I had sort of like Gibbs and Collins, who are both like pretty premium keepers,
Yeah. Yeah. Very, yeah. I would
but
say very premium.
I didn't want to trade Gibbs. I wasn't going to trade Gibbs. I just, like,
Mm-hmm.
aesthetically, I just kind of want Gibbs on my team. Like, that's
Yep.
just a thing I was going to not do. So that was kind of off the table. And then we were like, okay, so I've got, I kind of want to get Knicks. I think we sort of, but then all your other receivers on Harlem, it's like there's not like, they're all kind of almost as good value
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
Collins anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
It's true.
not like
Yeah.
it's hard to pick somebody to throw in.
That's true.
And so we kind of died, and I was like, I wasn't that into Chase Brown at the time, like, so it just didn't really come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came back to it before then it, like, before the auction, it was like, okay, well, I still kind of felt like I had a year to pick up, like a keeper to
Yeah.
pick up.
Yeah.
Like, it
Yeah.
was like,
If
if I
yeah.
kept Nico, I had like Nico for like 2 years or 3 years. It's like, it's all kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, when you have these cheap players, sometimes doing the 2 years, it's like you're kind of like, what am I even doing here?
Yeah. You're saving
Like,
marginal
you know,
amounts. Yeah. It's yeah.
yeah, you're like putting you're like committing the extra value and the keeper year, and
Yep.
committing the salary down the road, and you're like, well, I'm only saving like $1 or like
Yep.
two
Yep.
dollars,
Yep.
and so I don't know. It kind of like, I feel like I got burned doing that last year, and I was like, okay, I'm not doing the 2 years, like, do three or do one.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, so I can kind of, there's some value for me to get rid of Collins to someone who can do more years maybe,
Yep.
and then I was like, okay, maybe I kind of was like, seeing some buzz for Chase Brown. I thought, like, he's kind of bad. Like, I don't like when I watch him. Like, I don't think he's a player that I watch and I'm like, this
Yeah.
guy's like, this is clearly a top
Right.
running
Right.
back in the
Yeah.
league, but
But
I don't know.
his
The stats are
situation
there.
is
The
his situation is
situation is
really good.
really good.
The
The Bengals
stats
didn't do anything to make you
exactly,
feel
yeah.
worse
That's yeah.
during the
Like
preseason.
really no challenge whatsoever. Nobody interesting to like compete. Like it is pretty much as safe of a thing, and, like, even if aesthetically he isn't pleasing, like, just, like, his numbers last year when he took over the job, like, like, what's really gonna change? I mean, like, just random variation and maybe he could get hurt, but, like, if he just does kind of what he did last year when he took over the job, and there's no indication that he would lose the job other than, injury or something like that, right? Then like, like that's a really good value, right? He's really cheap and yeah, I mean like I agree. He's not the most like sexy runner where I'm like, "Oh, this guy's a talent." But um yeah, I mean, I really thought you did well in this trade just because while Chase Brown isn't like sexy, like running back drops off pretty hard, and like like you're saving a lot of money if you even consider him like on the lower end ish of like what his like rankings were like by experts,
Right,
right?
right.
So like you're still coming out like pretty ahead, and then like a QB, a really cheap QB like keeper, we'll see if like Bo Nix can follow up with a good year, but like just the upside on a QB keeper like that is just like so high, right? Like if he consolidates his strong rookie year with a you know as good or better year this year, like you can extend him for pretty much any amount of time, and like he'll be giving you a ton of value every year, right? So um, yeah, I mean, I see where Harlem kind of like was trying to like consolidate, but I thought you took good advantage of the situation and got like two really strong keepers for obviously Nico Collins is one of like the premier keepers, but like you didn't get like two dimes for a quarter. Arguably got a, I guess there's no cent piece that adds up to more than 25. But yeah, I thought it was like, really good, and I wish like my team had like the pieces to cut like a Nico Collins equivalent to like try to break up into this, but we just couldn't like figure out like what would be, fair along those
Yeah,
lines. Yeah.
I think that was the end the sort of way, like, just when you look at Harlem's roster, it's like, well, they had to trade somebody
Yep, yep,
because or
yep.
cut Marvin Harrison, do
Yeah.
something like crazy, right? And so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that doesn't seem, as
Right.
that doesn't seem good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something had to happen. And it's just like these are just they're hard players to trade because they're so good. Like
Yeah.
all of their
Yeah.
keepers are so good
Yeah.
that they're just like it's hard to even find trades. And
Yeah.
that was where we and I think we're trying to get Bo Nix. Like my understanding is there were some other offers on Bo Nix. It's just like it was going to take one of the premium keepers,
Yep. Yep.
to
Yeah.
get him, and then I think just the way
Yeah.
things worked out, this kind of made the most sense.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it came together pretty quickly once we did the Chase Brown thing. It was kind of like that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So um,
I think this trade
yeah.
has the potential to be, transformative for like, 2 or 3 years for both your franchises. If Knicks
Hmm.
and Brown hit
Hmm.
the high end of their outcomes, then I mean, it'll be hard for Nico to do enough to like where Harlem won't regret it at least a little bit. And for you, if they do hit their higher outcomes, then your core like is extremely buff for like
Yeah.
yeah, the near future, like that
Right.
this is a
Right. Right.
runway that can last like 2 or 3 years with how cheap Knicks is, and Chase Brown's still cheap, even if he's not a sexy player, like so um I do understand like Harlem kind of had to, and I think they shopped all off season, and then like this was kind of like the best option, and in the end you got to just take the best option that makes sense for your team. But the upside for Madison is like where I'm really interested here. Like I just think um yeah, I mean it could be something that builds, a contender, and you're like, "Oh wow, that trade really kind of set off like how my team got to, the finals, or, won a championship." Like I definitely think this is a trade that will resonate for at least a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you still the Harlem core is
Yeah, yeah.
substantial
I
for
mean,
the next
yeah.
couple of years
I mean,
too.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah. It's yeah.
it's a Bulls Jordan Bulls type of
Yeah,
roadblock to
yeah.
anyone else,
Yeah, a little bit,
for the next
yeah.
couple of years. But
A little bit for
maybe
sure,
I
yeah.
can
And
be the
Harlem's core
Utah
is
Jazz.
extremely cheap and pretty young too, right? So like their runway
Right.
is
No,
super
exactly.
long too, so
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like it
yep,
just, I don't know. Like, I think for them, it was like getting a player who's just at least a step function
yep,
higher
yeah,
than the
yeah,
players they were
yeah,
trading. And
yeah,
it just, when you just look around at the rosters, it's like there's
yeah,
not a ton of
right.
choices.
Yeah, and most
Um,
teams aren't gonna like, even if it does kind of make sense, a lot of teams are just gonna be attached to like any keeper that is
yeah,
that good, It's
yeah,
like it's hard to think all off season about
exactly.
like, oh, my team's gonna look so sick with like, Gibbs and Nico Collins, and
Yeah,
then
yeah. No,
even if
I mean, I
yeah,
barely got to use Nico Collins,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
He came in at the end of last year
yeah,
and then came out,
yeah,
was only in a couple, he's injured for a little bit, like only in a couple games. So
for sure, yeah.
I think, yeah, I was a little, I'm a little spooked on that Texans offense, but
See, I saw that.
not like so
Right.
much that I'm like,
That's
oh, I think Nico's really good.
Yep.
This wasn't like a get rid of Nico trade, but
Yep.
I
Yep.
am
Yep.
just a tiny bit spooked on
Right.
that
So
offense.
these are like the two things I probably am a little bit lower on Nico than maybe like, industry is. Like he does get banged up a little bit more than you would ideally like. Like, he's not super durable as a wide receiver. Not bad enough where I would worry too much about it, but he has missed chunks of games in his career, like even before he broke out. Um, I'm pretty sure he missed like 3 or 4 games at a time. Nothing too serious, but like, that's always a risk. And then my other risk is like, I really don't know if I trust how the Texans are building their offensive line. Like, I don't think they did enough, even though it was like such a big problem for them last year. I do think like, that offense, if it just doesn't have time to throw, like it could be a little bit less explosive than people are thinking. We already saw it last year, but I think to some extent people kind of just like wrote it off a little bit as like, oh, like yeah, it was just a bad year. But I don't know if they fixed their issues enough where I think it could even get a little bit worse, right? So that is probably a little bit of my concern with any Texans asset, but you know upgrade, like it is definitely still at least a tiny bit of an upgrade for Harlem, especially for how they already have Jaden Daniels and then JJ McCarthy. Like, it would have been kind of crazy for them
Yeah,
to just
yeah,
carry three
exactly.
quarterbacks in, no matter like,
Yeah.
so in terms of asset allocation, like they just kind of had to. And um I think you were just the beneficiary of being the team with the pieces that made the most sense, right?
With the right
So
setup,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
really do. I mean, if you really look around at the different teams, like the current crop of keepers, like there's just not a lot of players that aren't already on Harlem that you're like, oh,
yeah,
that guy has as
yeah, yeah. That
good or
guy's
better.
better
Like
than
this
yeah,
guy has
yeah.
as good or better contract
It
than
is so
Nico
true.
at
Yeah,
whatever
it's
he
so
was
true. It's
at.
so
Like
true.
they're, there's just not very many.
Hmm.
So it's just just the choices. Otherwise, and then you have to get really creative because it's like they can't do 3 for 1. They can't
Yeah,
do
yeah,
2 for 1. Like
yeah,
it has to be two coming out from Harlem and one going in.
yeah,
So yeah, it's just was a kind of one of those positions where it's like, well, everyone else traded their keepers for Fab, who had too many keepers. So
yeah,
at
yeah,
least they got a player
yeah,
for the
yeah,
too many keepers.
yeah.
All right, so next one. This is the real head scratcher here. OC receives 2 Fab. Virginia receives DeAndre Swift, who was cut maybe a day later or two
Yeah,
days later.
yeah,
I asked Virginia about this. He said he didn't know that you could only keep 5 players.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I
yeah.
don't know, man.
I thought that
uh,
part was pretty clear. Everybody was like stuck on the 7 or 8 years, right? But I thought the five
yeah,
keeper part was pretty clear, so I was a little bit confused that
pretty clear.
he found
A
that.
guy who usually knows all the rules.
Yeah, and that part hasn't changed since like last year. Like I was a little bit
Yeah,
surprised. So but in the end it is two for age of budget.
too
So
fab.
yeah, but it was a funny.
Yeah, would someone else have kept? What did Swift end up? What ended up happening with Swift?
That's a
He
good
went
question.
for Yeah. Swift went to Wilson Park for 24, and he would have been like
18.
18, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
So would have been
Yeah,
an okay
not bad.
keeper. six
Yeah,
dollars,
yeah.
like
There
not
are
the
worse.
worst.
There are worse guys out there, I think.
Yeah. There's definitely guys who got kept who would have gone for less.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
At least a couple. I'm
Yeah.
looking around.
Yeah, but not much to say.
Yeah,
Just
so not the worst,
a
but
rare error by Virginia in not knowing the rules and stuff.
yeah,
But you know,
yeah. We got more rules mishaps coming up. If you like rules mishaps, stay
yeah,
around for
yeah,
the
yeah,
next 10 minutes.
yeah.
All right, this next one is pretty interesting. This is like a real making a bet on your guy trade
Mm-hmm.
here, which was LIC traded Braylon Allen and their round three next year for Trevor Lawrence and Xavier Legette.
Mm-hmm.
Leggett. I don't know.
I
Do
believe
you
it's
know how to say
Leggett,
that?
Leggett, but
Leggett.
Leggett.
Okay,
Yeah.
Leggett. Yeah. And then Leggett, I think, was dead cap.
Yep.
Yeah, Leggett was six dead cap. So it's basically six dead cap, taking on six dead cap and getting Lawrence, who got kept for 11, so
Mm-hmm.
11 this year.
Yep.
For Braylon Allen, who got kept for 10, and the second round, and the third round pick next year.
Mm-hmm.
Which is yeah, it's a real bet on your guys trade, right?
Yeah.
Uh, obviously, I don't think anybody else in the league would have kept Braylon Allen. Maybe like someone would. I don't know. That's one of those
So
like
I
just
got the
like I
I got the
want this guy.
right. I got the feeling that in auction he'd probably go for like 10 to like 12, maybe 13 at like the highest end, right? And potentially like a little bit lower just because I think a lot of Jets fans are not
Yeah,
super
is he
high on
cracking nine?
yeah,
I
they're
don't
like,
know.
I feel like Jets fans are a little pessimistic on their own team, so like, I
Hmm.
don't feel like he would have cracked it. But getting off Leggett, I think was, this isn't the most expensive dead cap shedding we've seen. You know, uh Sam Laporta was famously shed with probably a better keeper than
Velo.
than Trevor
Mm.
Lawrence, right?
So we're
So
talking about this year's trades.
that's true. That's true. So I mean, you probably set the
Yeah.
bar high for how hard it is to get
Uh-huh.
off dead cap,
Uh-huh.
right? So maybe you
Uh-huh.
did
Uh-huh. Yeah.
did
Yeah.
LIC a favor here, but yeah, I mean, at least Mars got the pick back, which it again can be turned into something else later. And getting off Leggett is I don't he didn't even get drafted, right? So that was like just a
No.
complete dead end. And Mars has a ton of dead cap as is for Anthony Richardson and Josh Fields and stuff. So for them, it probably was worth it to like get off that dead cap a little bit more than maybe a team that has nothing on their sheet, right? So
Yep.
um, yeah, I mean, like what do you think of Braylon Allen like personally? Like what do you think he's
Uh, yeah, I mean, I like, I think he's good. Like, I do think he's good. I think he's a talented
is
player. I
he is
think, like,
he
unfortunately,
right
it's like are the Jets going to support two running backs and Garrett Wilson like, is this an
right
offense that's
right
going to be scoring
all right.
20 points a game
Yeah.
even?
So
Like,
a little bit of Mars's thinking, when I talk to him is Brees Hall is a free agent after this year, right? Correct? So
that's right.
there are rumors that he might get traded in mid-season if like the Jets are out of it, which I think could be very possible.
Interesting.
And just in the offseason if they do you know move on from Brees Hall and they don't think like running back is where they should put their money, Braylon Allen could be, the running back one for the Jets. And if you're higher on his talent than like if you think he's like a top 15 or top 20 like pure just runner, like if he had the right situation, then that's a situation where Braylon Allen could be going for 30 next year, like 40 next year, right? So
Hmm.
he would
Hmm.
have Braylon Allen locked in, ready to be extended or signed to a contract next year. And he does think like that has a high possibility of happening, right? But that's definitely a lot of moving pieces. Like you definitely are betting on like them not bringing back Brees Hall, Braylon Allen even being like, we haven't seen a ton out of him. So I can't confidently say he's an exceptional talent. I can't confidently say he's not that good of a guy, right? It's just Mars made a bet, and this is a case where we'll have to see like how accurate was his eye for like thinking, like, seeing a guy who actually has, talent that just needs the right situation, right? Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
that
yeah.
that's what I think
Um,
was going through Mars's head.
and it's cool. It's cool. I mean, I think like I respect that. Like I think that's what people should do in
Yeah.
fantasy football is
Oh, for sure.
like
Yeah.
have fun and
Yeah.
don't be a slave. Don't be a slave to the rankings
Oh,
and
for
just
sure.
like do
For
your
sure.
thing
For sure.
and make a bet on your guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's like it's like cool when when these things happen because it is kind of that is the thought process, right? It's like,
Mhm.
well, it's a major upside play, right? It's like a
Yep.
multi-year upside bet. But and then I think for for LIC, it's like I think Lawrence is a guy that LAC's always kind of liked is
Mhm.
the sense I get.
Yep.
I think it could be good. Sometimes he's good. I don't know. I don't not I'm not like a huge fan,
Yeah. Yeah. This
but
year
I
is gonna
get
be
it.
like, yeah,
I
this
get
year is
it.
gonna be like, how much has Lawrence been kind of like shitty because he's just, not that complete of a prospect, and how much of it was, dysfunction and like, bad offensive systems around him. He, at least on paper, should have the best offensive coaching he's had in his whole career, and probably the best weapons he's had in his whole career, right? So like, you know, there are really no excuses if he isn't good this year. Um, but I will say, like, when I watched him, like, in the past, like, definitely some dysfunction contributing, but I also kind of did feel like, as a decision maker, he's not really, sharp. He kind of doesn't um, make the right plays often enough, I thought. So, we'll see for sure, like this year, like how much of it is on him and how much of it is on the Jags, So um, I think definitely a lot of
Yeah, and
upside
I
for
think
LIC.
for
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, I think for LSU, the other thing that's kind of interesting here is that it locked in the QB situation, right? Because then
Yep,
it's like Stroud and Lawrence are the two QBs, and then you're kind of safe in the draft. You picked up
yep.
Tua also pretty cheap. Then you got three guys you kind of can rotate,
Hmm.
whatever. It's just like but it's also like, is that win? Like, are you really making the playoffs with those QBs?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I feel like I would have thought like not quite good enough to
Hmm.
be what I go into the year with, and
Right.
maybe that may like I guess it's hard to spend a bunch on a quarterback if you're just like, well, there's only like it's Lamar and Allen, so I got to spend 75 to get these guys. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I just like I feel like one of the things I feel strongly about in this league specifically is like you got to at least have like pretty good quarterbacks
I agree.
to
Yep.
to win. And maybe that's not always true. I mean, I guess Yonkers won last year with like pretty medium quarterbacks, but
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe that means nothing. Actually, Yonkers won last year with like Jared Goff and whoever. I don't even know who their other quarterback
Bryce
was.
Young was actually starting.
Bryce
Yeah.
Young. Yeah. Then was there someone? Did they have? They must have had someone else. They didn't have Bryce Young all year.
It's a
They
good
had someone
question.
who they dropped. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like but either way, you know what I mean. Like it's
Yep.
just
Yep.
like that. That. So whatever I'm saying, take it with a grain of salt because clearly it's wrong. But
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
feels like you
No, no, I
need
think so.
reliable
I think your
quarterbacks.
mindset is definitely true if you feel like you have the keepers to kind of like, like start ahead of the pack. If your keepers are good enough where you think like, oh, I have a really good chance of, just being a playoff team if nothing goes terribly wrong. I do agree you should aim for higher end QBs. But this is probably as weak as LIC's keepers have been in a while, right? So in that
Hmm.
case, I think you kind of just have to like hope to hit on like the Baker Mayfield or like the quarterback that gets drafted in the
Right.
teens,
Right.
but then like
Right.
performs in the like low tens or like even like 6 or 7.
Hmm.
I think by necessity you kind of have to go for that because otherwise you're just gonna kind of just be weak everywhere except QB, and like that's not really that much better either. So I
Yep.
th- I think for what he had going into the draft, like I actually like his build a lot because like none of those three quarterbacks are like you know wowing you right now, but there is at least a slight upside case where you know the offense for the Jags just turns out to be breaking out this year, and Trevor Lawrence is like a low end QB1, and even Tua, like I'm not personally buying it, but like when he's healthy, he has had stretches of good fantasy production, and that defense should be shaky enough where maybe they're just like throwing and he just gets there on volume. Obviously
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
concussions are gonna push him down on the rankings, but like this is at least a QB room where I could see you cobbling together like aggregate like a low like two low end QB1s, which I think is borderline good enough if the rest of your team hits to a good level, right? Um, so yeah, I actually like what both these teams were thinking. Like I think it makes a lot of sense for both sides. Mars picks up that third round pick so that they have you know trade capital down the line. Braylon Allen is a bet on talent that Mars thinks that they see. And yeah, LIC, I think this is their route to contention was like, coming in with like those kind of QBs that aren't obviously like top 6 or 7 and then hoping that they hit. And if they don't, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't have that year, if Stroud, continues to kind of like struggle, then they're probably selling, right? So like that's kind of the situation they're in where they can't really, have their cake and eat it too. They kind of had to choose somewhere to go in a little bit lighter, right? So yeah, I think it makes sense for both.
Yeah, yeah. I think, it's if you want Lawrence, I do think he would have been probably a little more expensive in the draft. I mean, the quarterback option was kind of nuts, so it's
Yeah,
hard. It was so hard to anticipate what was going to happen, and
for sure.
it's really hard to say like what would have happened with Lawrence in the auction. But if you wanted him, I think 11, like it's a nice price. Maybe he's good. Maybe he's good. Right, Lawrence was on like a 40, like whatever contract he had 2 years ago before he
Yeah,
got cut
yeah,
was like
yeah,
going up to like 37. So
yeah.
like you could totally see that happening again,
Yep,
and if there's some sort of return to form here. So
yep.
um yeah, don't hate it either way. I think, I really like these kinds of I do really like these kinds of
Right.
trades where it's like there's a guy I want. I don't want to fuck around in the auction. I just want to get that
Mhm.
and
I do think that's
and just
like
like
one of the strong points of our league. Like I do think like, teams are not afraid to just kind of, go for their gut, and sometimes
yeah,
they
yeah,
backfire and
yeah.
sometimes they look foolish, right? Like but like, I don't think anyone in this league is too much of a slave to like, oh, consensus says like this guy is, a QB2, so I gotta, value him strictly as that, or like, oh, like, 8 teams probably don't think this like running back is worth rostering, but so I'm, like everybody kind of just follows their own, their own thinking, their own strategy, their own philosophy, and I think that's probably why this league is like still like so interesting, like this deep into it, because like you know you see these moves and you're like, of course that's like a John move, and like you personally might not like it, but like these do hit like no matter how much like someone tries to be like, oh, I can like predict as much as possible. Like fantasy football is like just so volatile in general that like it's really not that bad of a strategy to like go a little bit off the beaten path a little bit. So I think we do really see some like interesting wins and some interesting like fails like down the line.
Hmm. Totally. Um, yeah, totally agree. And like even like the JSN trade last year was kind of one of those ones where
Mm-hmm.
everyone was kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, it's young JSN. I don't know about that. The keeper really, and then
It
it's like,
worked out
no, no,
well. Yeah.
and that was great. Yeah, you
Yeah.
got your guy, and you didn't have to mess around the auction with
Yep.
some of these really uncertain. It's like it only takes one person to also be like, I
Exactly.
really want that guy,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
all of a sudden the price is getting driven up like crazy. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So, cool. All right, next one. And I have a hard stop at 9, so we'll speed run these last
Yep.
few here. Um, yeah, next one. So this was actually another really interesting trade where it felt like a lot of players who were kind of on the fringe of
Yep.
being kept or not being kept.
Mm-hmm.
And this was GK, Great Kills receives Jared Goff and 2 Fab from Yonkers, and Yonkers gets Gino and Mike Evans.
Yep.
So yeah, why don't you talk us through the what was going on for you with this trade?
Yeah. So after LIC got Trevor Lawrence, I think like either 5 or 6 teams had like two starting quarterbacks like pretty locked in, like Drew Keepers or rookie or whatever, right? So we didn't want Jared Goff to be kept because we obviously Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow ended up getting tagged, So he was off the board. Mahomes and Goff. Goff. Those were like four guys we were okay coming away with. You know, obviously the cheaper guys would lead to, stronger positions elsewhere. But like we didn't want to muddle with like Fields or whatever else was like Sam Darnold or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
once LIC got Trevor Lawrence, we were like, okay, so four teams. I mean, yeah, four teams need at least one quarterback, and if we release Goff back, we were like probably at most he goes for like a little bit more than what his keeper price would be, and decent chance just lower because just teams are out on quarterback and like it's less likely to get driven up, right? So we targeted Goff like just to make sure like Yonkers wouldn't keep him and like take him off the table. Um, and then like Mike Evans was gonna be extra for us just because uh we probably had like yeah we had a full group even like without Goff, right? So um it was just a simple trade just to make sure that Goff would hit auction. We were comfortable taking any of the top three quarterbacks, obviously, and okay getting Goff as well. And we did end up getting Goff for a little bit less than his keeper price. So it was just a maneuver basically for us to make sure Goff hit auction. For Yonkers, I think Mike Evans is probably like the main reason for this trade. Like you get an actual good keeper, and then Gino, I think they just ended up keeping because the stack with Bowers made sense. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it was
Hmm.
more of a strategic trade. Like we pretty much knew we weren't gonna keep Goff. It was just trying to mold the auction like available quarterbacks to something we liked because we were really afraid of four teams needing quarterbacks and then Goff being kept too, and then um, it would have been Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and then like Justin Fields as the next guy. Which I think Fields went for decent value, but like we just didn't want to be watching Justin Fields too much this year. So yeah, that was just purely like yeah, just maneuvering. We picked up two fab for guys we weren't gonna keep, and made sure that another guy hit the auction. So pretty simple for us, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Really tactically interesting trade. I think. Yeah, I think the most interesting one to me is like going for the stack. I think Yonkers saying like I'd rather have the stack with Gino. Maybe buying into the Raiders a
hmm
bit and saying like maybe get off of Goff.
Yeah,
While the
they
kitten's
got
good.
out on Jameson and Goff, so yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah. So
pivoted
like
away.
I think that's really interesting. And I think it kind of makes sense. Like if you just like I'm out on the Lions,
Yep.
I'm out on the Lions and I just want
Yeah.
to, kind of restart with the Raider.
Right.
Lions or
Yeah.
Raiders are my new best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. The meme. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Another
it's a
example of
kind of a cool trade. I think
a team making like yeah like
go ahead, yeah.
having an opinion on just like maybe consensus isn't necessarily out on the Lions really, but if you see something where you're like I don't love how this team is trending and like you just divest yourself. I think this is another example of like teams kind of going off the book and like just kind of going with what they feel is like going to happen in the NFL, right? And like it's definitely something that could happen, and like he'll look really smart for getting out of you know, an offense that could dip, and maybe the Raiders are the offense that rise, right? So definitely we're seeing like
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot of
very
like yeah
possible.
conviction trades where you're like, okay, this is what I think is gonna happen, and I'm gonna forget value, forget like what plus what equals like this. Like I'm just gonna mold my team to like fit my opinions like as best, and we'll see how it shakes out. So
Yeah, yeah, and then I think Evans 33, it's probably about what he would have gone for in the auction. So,
yeah.
maybe a little under probably like he's maybe slightly better than all these other guys who went for about 30, but
hmm
in that group. And
Yep.
yeah, kind of a nice trade, I think. Just another one like, getting the players you want
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's cool. So that's the end of the off season. Then we're in the post auction trades, and we've
Yep.
just had three pretty small ones. Two of which I think involve Mars not understanding a rule that I also didn't understand.
Yeah.
But the first one is Dante Thornton, and who is a Raiders rookie on the Raiders,
Yep.
and OC receives one fab and that same LIC third round pick that came over in the Trevor Lawrence trade.
Yep.
Um, so basically, just trading. I think Dante Thornton was maybe a third round pick this year, so maybe it's just like
Mhm.
get trading your.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. I think he was
Yeah.
third round, so it's just like trading a third round pick
Delayed.
this year. Yeah, delayed trade. I think yeah. I mean, it's it's fine if you like Thornton, go for it. I think not a ton of buzz in the offseason either way, but not the worst. So you
Yeah.
know, um, seems all right. I think the tricky thing is that when the player's traded, they can't be put on practice squad or Debbie,
Yeah.
which is fine when you do it once, but then you get to the
Right.
next
Yeah. Yeah.
trade, which
Exactly.
is
I was
Mars
surprised
and
Mars didn't.
Madison.
Yeah, I was surprised Mars didn't try to
Two
rewind
more.
any of these trades because, uh,
Yeah. Well, I'll explain what happened.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so Mars and me. So I want. So basically, Mars wanted Kyle Williams, like perpetual stack in the
yep, yep.
future.
The Megazord.
Kind of a juicy, yeah, juicy Megazord. That's right. Get the whole New England off. New coach, young players. Who knows? Like, could be kind of cool.
Yep.
And then and then I wanted to get Giddens for Taylor.
Hmm.
I seemed and that seemed kind of fair, 1 for 1.
Yep.
And then John was like, I'm not going to do 1 no way. I'm like,
Too
okay,
boring.
whatever. So then he's just like, okay, try this and this and this. Eventually, I figured I could just put Pat Bryant on the practice squad. I'll put DJ Giddens won't be on practice squad,
Yep.
and it's like whatever, Williams squad for me, Monengay, I don't care about a ton.
Yep.
And I, and I was like, whatever, because you're making me crazy going through
Yeah,
so many
yeah, yeah,
iterations of this
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Like fundamentally, to me, it's like, look, you want Williams and I want Giddens.
Yeah. And then
This
yeah.
is fine. This is a fine trade that everybody's happy with. It was just like getting all the little pieces into this thing.
Yep.
And so then we find out you can't put the guys on the practice squad. It's like, oh, now I had right that we're gonna have to cut because these guys aren't gonna do anything. Like we're gonna get
Yeah,
injuries,
exactly. Yeah.
and these guys aren't gonna do anything. And it's like even in like you've got players who might be injured and
Yep.
you don't know because you have to do your waiver on Thursday.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're like, well, I need a backup for my
Yeah.
guys who might be injured. And so I'm gonna have to drop all these random guys in.
Yeah.
So
That's
so
why.
it's like,
That's
well, if I
why.
could put them
Yeah.
on practice squad, it'd be fine. But then it's like, well, there's no way that like Pat Bryant is staying on my team when this
Yeah.
guy's going to do nothing he's going to play
Right.
like
Yeah.
8
Yeah.
snaps a game for the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
4 weeks. And then it's like, well, week 5 I've got buys. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the end of your random frivolous bench guys is
Yeah.
when your players start having buys.
Right.
So,
That's what I'm saying. Like,
like
you look at Mars's roster, and they have a lot of guys that I don't think that they're gonna get information on within the first, 3 or 4 weeks,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like that they can't
yeah.
practice squad. Like, if out of the 6 bench spots you have, if like 3 or 4 of them, like you're pretty much not expecting to see anything from them, like weeks 1 and 2, like you're either just gonna miss out on a ton of like the relevant free agent pickups,
Right, the
or yeah,
sexy
right,
waiver wire,
right.
sexy week 1 waiver wire
Yeah,
guys, yeah.
or you're just gonna have to drop them, which I thought he would just like revert, like because you can reverse a trade if both sides agree to it, but
So then I was like, "Look, let's just reverse it." He's like, "No way." I'm like, "Okay, why don't we do Williams and Giddens,
yeah,
and
you could have
then we
just
get the other guys
shrunk
out
it.
of here
Yeah,
and go back to that trade?" And then he was still like, "No way. No,
yeah,
I'm not doing that." And then I was just like, "Fuck this. I'm
yeah.
not giving you fab to
Okay,
reverse this trade where
uh,
you're gonna have to
you took a
drop these
stand.
guys." And like
You
you
took a
might have to
stand.
drop. He might have to drop. Yeah, no, it was just too much. It was just too
Yeah,
much. It was crazy. It
yeah,
was like, like I, love trading with John as much as anybody. It was like we've all been there.
yeah, yeah,
We've
yeah,
all
yeah.
been down this
Yeah,
road before.
it's the Mars trade hole. You
Um,
get stuck in there, and you're
yes,
pretty
yes.
much exchanging like 20 different iterations of like slightly different things for like a whole like day
Yes.
straight, and you're like, at some point, you're just like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I am gonna be looking forward to seeing how many of these guys, even make it past like week 2 cuts. Like it's maybe he'll be just so like comfortable everywhere else that he won't feel the need to, and maybe one of these guys pops a little bit earlier than we think, but like definitely carrying a lot
Maybe
of.
Swift gets injured,
Yeah, yeah, no,
and
it's
Mongays get
yeah.
snaps or something.
Thornton's
I mean,
starting, so like maybe he like is better than like a lot of people
yeah,
think. So
yeah,
it's
maybe,
possible, but
maybe.
I will be watching that, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I'm assuming that I will end up dropping Pat Bryant, but
Right, right.
whatever.
And
It's
but
just
yeah, Giddens is
cost of doing business.
yep, Giddens makes sense for your team, Jonathan Taylor, if he got hurt, that would be pretty bad. So it's good
Yeah,
to
that's the idea.
yeah,
Just maybe
yeah.
maybe some upside next year
Yeah.
if Taylor goes to a new team or something.
True. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Running
yeah.
backs can shift so
Uh,
quickly that if you can hold a rookie running back, like I'm almost never like, oh, that's a waste of a spot. Like there's always, things happen so quickly that yeah, I definitely see even like the long term possibilities with guys like that. Yeah. And then the last
yeah,
trade,
and then yeah, last trade Evan Ingram for one fab.
yeah. I
This
feel like Evan
not
Ingram gets
one we're gonna
moved.
write home about, but
Evan Ingram gets moved every offseason, I feel like somebody always drafts him as like their second tight end
uh-huh,
or something, and then like they decide they don't want to carry two tight ends really, and then they trade him to a team
uh-huh,
that completely punted tight ends until like the and like this always happens. Like, somebody always like, oh, this is too cheap for like Evan Ingram, or like Evan Ingram should be
right,
rostered,
right,
and they take him as their second tight end, and then like they're like, wait, actually, I don't really want to carry two tight ends for no reason. Like, yeah. So I feel like this trade happens pretty often. There's not a lot to say. Like, it's Wilson Park, I think, has like three other tight ends as is. So like, you know, definitely didn't need Ingram. They probably would have just dropped him if, you know, OC didn't throw Fab at him. And yeah, I mean OC, I don't even know who their previous tight end was. So um Ingram's starting for them, not the worst bet.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it seems fine. It
yep.
seems fine.
Yeah.
And I think it's basically like getting someone off waivers,
Yeah,
for one
yeah,
fab.
yeah.
Like,
That was
yeah,
basically extended waivers. I
Wilson
agree.
Park didn't need him. Has plenty of tight ends.
Yep, yep, yep.
Uh, yeah. All
Okay.
right, cool. And that's our off season.
Yeah,
So yeah, really good, really good. I think really interesting trades this off season. Really like the more motion with the draft picks and the rookies and yeah, I think yeah, curious to see kind of like you said like how this develops over the next couple years.
for
But
sure. Yeah, for
um,
sure. I
good
do
stuff so
think
far.
we have like something interesting there, and it just needs to kind of be like fleshed out, and like people have to kind of figure out like what they're doing with it, and because I do think we're gonna start seeing like some good Devi success stories from like the fourth rounds, and then like the fifth and sixth, seventh rounds that are unguaranteed. I think a couple of guys, like, a few guys already made rosters, so we'll see if any of those turn out to be pretty good, and once we build up a little bit of familiarity, so I think it's gonna be pretty interesting. So pretty excited.
Yeah. All right. I gotta
Yep,
jump.
yep.
So
Thanks for being on.
see you. Yeah, thank you. If anyone else wants to jump in the voice chat, feel free. All
Yep.
right. Later, guys.
All right, peace.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Okay, so just to close up, I guess this is our 18th year. Um, it is pretty crazy that we've been going for that long. Um, Here's a question I have for like everybody just listening. Uh, Harlem or the field this year? Who would you take to win it all? Like, I do believe like this is probably the strongest one team has looked like before week one, like relative to the rest of the league. Obviously fantasy football is so unpredictable that I don't think you could ever easily say anyone's gonna walk to a win. But you know if you look at their roster, I was checking Fantasy Pros Superflex draft rankings, and they have seven of the top 25 players. Like on average, you should have like two and a half, and they straight up have seven, and then the rest of their team is like still pretty strong. So I don't know. I do think like unless something really bad happens, like it does feel like they're gonna be right there, and then they even have the keepers to like make the right moves, later on, right? So it really does feel like probably the best starting position. Like if we did, you know, title odds before like week one, like the NFL does or whatever, this would probably set the record for I think the highest like, you know, handicap before week one. So I am curious to see, if other people are seeing it that way, or, if they think, Harlem has enough vulnerabilities where, you know, they might not be as strong as advertised. Um, so yeah, just yeah, let me know what you think about that, and I'm gonna close up our first show, and I'll try to do this weekly. I'm gonna try to have Alex on pretty often. Hopefully weekly if there are enough trades to talk about, and his role will just be, give opinions on trades and talk about what he thinks is going on there. Uh, I'd love it if people were like, just jumping on voice to just you don't have to have it structured. You could just like talk about anything about your team, about someone else's team, about something that happened. Like like I'm gonna try to keep um the shows and like the line open for people to like contribute in any way that they want. So just let me know if you're interested in like anything on a consistent basis, or just you can just let me know before a show like, oh hey, like I want to jump on and like talk about my matchup last week or whatever, and we can just talk like we're just talking fantasy, like meeting up at a bar or something, so that's kind of what I'm like foreseeing, and what my goals are for this year in terms of media. Just have it a little bit more consistent, and just have less of a barrier to like set something up and like talk, like just we'll just have the mic open. Just you could tell me when you could jump on voice, and then we could just talk about anything. So um yeah, think about it, and that's the end of the show. Peace.
Dustin. Hey, Dustin. Could I,
Yep.
could I, uh, could I, I'm a long time listener,
Oh yeah, we
big
have a
fan of the show.
call in. We have a call in. Actually, the former host.
Calling in.
Just kidding.
I have a question. I have a
Yeah, yeah,
question. I have a question.
yeah, yeah.
I need some help. So I have Harold Fannin
Yep,
and Woody Marks,
yep.
and I don't know who to put into the Devi and who to put into the practice squad.
Ooh,
What
I
what
love
consideration do you
right.
make
I love
to
I
do
love
that
talking like
season?
strategy about this, because there's definitely like a lot of ways to like think about it, right? Hmm. Fannin or Woody Marks, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it really matters, but still, I
Yeah,
would
like
love
they're
to get your
they're they're
feedback.
both not like super high like chances of being something. Like they're both on the longer shots probably. Um, let's see. Would you cut Fannin
Wait,
if
it's clear? Wait, tell me. Yeah.
no, I don't think it's clear. Would you cut Fannin if he doesn't do anything in the first 4 or 5 weeks? Like, would you want that
Uh,
roster spot? Is really the question.
that's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm willing to be patient.
If you're willing to be patient, I actually would put Fannin on Devi, because I do think
Heavy,
like,
right? Yeah.
yeah, tight end is like a good position to kind of like, because especially because tight ends are like slow to like kind of like get acclimated and stuff, and
Oh, I see. I get it
yeah.
now. So right, if I put Fenton in the practice squad, I could rotate him out and keep Woody Marks for when I want to activate him. That's the other way to do it,
Right, yeah, that's
right?
the other way to think about it too. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can.
Oh.
It's about that
Oh man,
flexibility.
that makes
If
it even harder.
so, it's about like, yeah, what I guess what more long term conviction do you have? Like, you have to like kind of like picture your guy basically like sucks or does nothing for 6 weeks. Like, who are you more itching to like cut, or like just drop from your roster, right? So whoever that is, I would probably put in the practice squad, because you could like shuffle it out for a different guy, someone more interesting,
Okay.
and then whoever like I actually do think Fannin is pretty good. He just doesn't have like a straightforward role
Yeah.
right now. So probably personally, I would probably put him in Devi, but it really depends on how sure you are, like in how good they are. So,
Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful. Thank you.
all right. Thanks for
Is
contributing.
Diaz gonna play for
Wonky,
me?
let me ask you a question.
Okay, yeah, Diaz
Here we
just
go. Here we go.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shit.
do you how strongly do you feel about Woody Marks's long-term outlook?
And that's another tough one.
Right, yeah.
So right, because if he's on Devi or practice squad, if you want to put him in your lineup, you got to activate him and give him a contract, right?
Yep.
Right.
Which means you're not just saying I think this guy might be good this year.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying I think this guy might be a multi-year guy. Now, in
Ideally,
my
yes.
view, Woody, you know, Woody Marks's value is that backfield is a mess right now, and he could emerge, as the guy for this year, right?
Yep.
Why not next year? No, okay, but yeah, okay, I got you.
Yeah, I mean, like it could happen, but it's less common that a player with that draft capital, becomes a long-term play. So
Yeah.
I
Good.
would
So,
even
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
consider putting him on your bench.
Yep.
And if you
Yep.
have a different guy who's like a prospect, that's who goes in there. But absolutely, Dustin, I agree with you that Fannin belongs in the Debbie spot because this is
Yep.
a long-term project, but it's a guy who's got a lot of talent
Mm-hmm.
and who you're going to
I do
want to
think he's pretty
speculate
good.
and hang on to over time.
Yep.
Ah, look at that.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so
So
now
so
you
yeah.
define
The practice squad. Yeah, I would actually maybe consider, even the guys on waivers you could pick up and still stick in your practice squad. So maybe you could comb waivers again and look for a guy that you want to put in practice squad, and maybe you carry Woody Marks active, so you just don't have to activate him if he's like spot starting, because this is probably as wide open as that backfield is gonna be for him, right? So like you might want to use him without having to commit like future years to him. So, that could mean Malik Washington. He is eligible for practice squad. It could be somebody off of waivers maybe that, you put there. I don't think you have to be married to Woody Marks um in, either practice squad or Devi if you see it the way, I think Diaz and I see it. So yeah, I
yeah,
think I
yeah,
think strategically, yeah, it's definitely something you should think about. Like if I want to activate him, like will I have faith in him like beyond this year, or will it just kind of like hold you back from activating him, and then like also not really functioning as depth either, right? Because if you can't activate him, he's just if you need him, it's kind of stuck, right? So yeah, I would definitely, I think that's like pretty good advice, and I would at least consider like, is there somebody else maybe on waivers or on my roster that I could stick in practice squad, and maybe Woody Marks on active bench. And then like, you can cut him if he never gets the job in like 4 weeks, or if, you know, without having to like give him a contract and stuff, So yeah, a
right.
good question. I think strategically, like definitely, yeah, a lot of people are still developing their ideas on like how to differentiate Devi and practice squad. So yeah, in the end, it is your kind of like preference, like how you see certain players. But I do think there's certain ideas behind like who you would prefer in a Devi and like stuff like that. So yeah, I love that question.
Yeah, I think the also the if you do use it as like a 1 year thing, the dead cap isn't too bad, right? I
No,
mean,
no,
it's
it's
still
not.
dead
Yeah,
cap,
yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah, like
like
you
Gorendo
can
for me.
probably do you can probably do like one or two like activations where
Yeah.
you
Yep.
like, okay, yeah, this guy, I'm not gonna keep him. That's like 6 dead cap, 5 dead cap next year. Like you could do one or two for sure. So like if that's how you see the use of that, if you really don't have another better guy for like practice squad, and like you think Woody Marks is that best guy because he probably does have more long-term potential than maybe guys you would pick up off waivers, then yeah, I think knowing that you're just gonna maybe eat dead cap, but like it's one or two is not gonna kill you. So I think it shouldn't
Yeah, I'm looking
hinder
at the
you.
waivers right now. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
This
All
that was
right,
helpful.
everybody, good
Can I
luck.
announce it right now? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, you can do it on Discord. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Good luck, everybody. NFL season starts tomorrow. 18th year. Our league is old as fuck. Um, so yeah, good luck. I'm really looking forward to it. Peace.